I want to see it. I want to read it.
Welcome back. Today we've got quite the report for you. I'm going to be presenting information that details World of Warcraft subscriber trends. This is real data from a Blizzard presentation that took place at GDC this year. In fact, it took place like a day or two ago. Now, in doing a story like this, talking about a thing that's kind of leaked out, it's got to be genuinely newsworthy, it's got to serve a public interest, and given that we are talking about World of Warcraft sub numbers, I think for the audience here, that is completely obvious. Now, this will be going public eventually. GDC talks always end up being available after the fact in the GDC vault, though often at a decent bit of a delay. Now, me saying this does make it all sound very serious, and in a way it is serious. We are dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, but mostly, this is fascinating. This charts World of Warcraft's success, its downward trend. It even confirms its lowest point in modern history. Do you want to know when WoW is at its worst? You're going to find that out today. And we even have an internal breakdown of why the Shadowlands expansion failed. And by the end,
I'll be curious to hear what that actually is.
End of this analysis, you will have the most accurate possible subscription number that can be done right now, and a subscription number for right now. We will also know WoW sub numbers for its worst periods of health, and we'll be able to compare our workings out to Blizzard and Activision Blizzard's prior statements. I cannot wait to get into this, and if this kind of thing is tickling your brain, getting it whirring, I think you'll love today's sponsor. Boot.dev, their mission is to teach you back-end web development, which is an amazing skill, and in this case, using Python and Go. And they'll, of course, be doing it the smart way by making it fun. Boot is an online self-paced platform 100% designed to get you writing tons of code, and not just any code, because by working through RPG game-inspired problems, well, it's actually fun, and it leverages things you already know. Boot itself has got quests, levels, XP, and achievements to keep it addicting, and you can even get 25% off your first purchase using my
So is this for like shoes?
They have an incredible, very complete and in-depth learning path that also leverages the things that we like, with roleplay being woven through the courses. Things like developing and deploying a Pokedex, learning object-oriented programming concepts by working through RPG combat examples. Basically, it's an approach that is leveraging the understanding you already have to help those concepts click and to keep it fun. And what's around the learning matters as well, be it their Discord community, their open communications with their monthly posts, the boot.dev beat, which keeps you in the loop with new content. As an example, they've this month shipped upgraded weekly streaks as a feature. There are community boss battles, so that's also cool. And yeah, there you'll see all the comings and goings of the platform. It's just a really awesome package, and you can check them out today at boot.dev/Bellular, where code Bellular gets you 25% off your first purchase, and that's backed by a no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee, where they've got free demos of all of their courses.
That's pretty good.
Here's Boot, and let's roll. First, we've got a graph of subscribers. This is something we've not got in a decade. Blizzard stopped reporting them during Warlords of Draenor because, the sub numbers went down pretty damn big.
They were bad.
Anyway, you see the numbers be pretty good for the launch of Legion. We see Legion lose players, then flatten out. BFA bumps us up, but not by as much as I thought, to be honest. But immediately after BFA, we do see awful, awful months. And what we're actually looking at here is a rolling average of World of Warcraft subscribers. It does not get any more real than that. Now, at the time of Classic's launch, we heard that it just about doubled WoW subs, and this graph absolutely does back that up. Classic then was
not a surprise. A lot of people probably were playing Classic back then. I mean, Classic was it was probably one of the biggest game releases ever. It was insane.
As we were moving into Shadowlands, of course, given the pandemic, it just did incredibly well. But that was followed by crippling failure. And when we zoom in, we see the unbroken line is the actual subs, the dashed line is the expected subs. You can see Shadowlands dropped like a rock, and unlike Legion and BFA, Classic existed during those initial quarters of Shadowlands.
It did.
And looking at this, you may think the TBC and Wrath Classic didn't help much. Remember, TBC, Wrath Classic, and regular World of Warcraft all show the same subscription. So even if TBC was doing pretty decently, that could very much be cancelled out by the performance of...
I think that's what it was. Because TBC, like, I do think that, like, classic, like vanilla WoW, 2004 WoW, that's what is going to be the most popular. Now, a lot of people seem to still be rating in Wrath, and like actually that might not be true, but like to me, I thought Classic was like really the big one. And also, I would argue that with Wrath and Burning Crusade, this number would have been even lower if it didn't have this. I think that if anything, the Shadowlands numbers would have gone down into the fucking dirt. Because you've got to remember, like, that was also at the exact same time as, like, that whole sexual harassment lawsuit and everything like that. Because Burning Crusade came out on, like, what, June 2nd or something like that, 2021. So that was like 2 months afterwards. Was only like this much down. I don't know, man. TBC Phase 2 Pay to Win killed it. Yeah, it definitely hurt a lot. The boycott. Yeah, true. Applies to BFA too. Well, BFA was pretty far back in the past. Like that wasn't really the same thing. But like I would say that the Shadowlands like content drought was 1,000 times worse than BFA. Because, like, at least with BFA, people still had hope for Classic. With Shadowlands, it was already over.
Shadowlands. And, of course, it's very much not a surprise when we see this labeled as...
And also, as I said, the beginning of Shadowlands was a great game. The problem was really that they didn't innovate and make the game, they didn't change the game fast enough. I really had a lot of fun playing Shadowlands the first couple months. It was great.
High churn. Yeah, we all knew that. The difference here is we're hearing it from Blizzard directly. Now... next, here's another slide for us to look at, and this one gets really interesting. This is a breakdown of why Shadowlands didn't work in their estimation. They say Afterlife setting wasn't accessible, new antagonist wasn't developed.
Afterlife setting wasn't accessible. I think the reason why it wasn't accessible is they didn't try to have enough, like they tried to invent their whole own mythology for it, and I think that if they had made it more in line with like kind of existing mythology, I think people would have at least been able to understand it better.
Well-known story heroes were diminished. I mean, does that match how Shadowlands felt to you? Certainly does for me. And this, remember, straight from the horse's mouth, is the closest that we will see to Blizzard just saying straight up, this whole thing was a mistake, we shouldn't have done it, we've ruined our iconic heroes, the villain sucked. As for
it even says well-known story heroes were diminished. I mean, they're probably talking about like Arthas, etc. Maybe not hero in that case, but you know what I mean. I think this is definitely true. I mean, Shadowlands... new antagonist wasn't developed. That's really the problem. Like, I think the Jailer could have been a fantastic, like, antagonist, a fantastic boss, but it just wasn't developed. That's all there was to it. Yeah, who cares?
As for gameplay, they say it lacked variety, borrowed power was wearing thin, systems were not evolving, and that I get. They were just iterating.
Very fucking true. Absolutely. They are totally on the money with this.
The same thing again and again and again.
Yep.
And when we think about variety, I mean, hey, 16 months in the Sanguine Depths, does that sound good to you? Ugh. Vitally, they call out community specifically, saying gaps in content, lack of transparency, didn't feel heard.
I mean, totally fucking accurate. Absolutely. It's great to see Blizzard just, yep, there it is.
I mean, it's all shit that we said, right?
But thought Denathrius was cooler than Jailer. Everybody did.
A lot of Team 2 members were not happy at this period of time. There's a phrase I could say referring to some cliques, but I will not say it because it would be revealing and that would be irresponsible. But that kind of thing was going on.
Of course.
And another side is there has...
Well, this was also at the... Shadowlands, like, this was in the middle of that sexual harassment lawsuit in California. It was huge. So, yeah, absolutely.
There's been quite a lot of staff turnover since the Shadowlands. Anyway, TLDR, it was a little bit of a shit show, and I think that absolutely did show in their public communications. The question then for us is, does the content of this slideshow feel like it's been internalized by the team? I mean, literally, in some ways. Game-wise...
I think that, yes, they have internalized these things, and I think Dragonfight fixed a lot of the problems that were in Shadowlands. Dragonfight has some of the same problems, like I was saying, like add-ons, like raids, stuff like that, right? But in terms of like these issues, they have fixed a lot of these issues with Dragonflight, which is good. I
very much think so. The state of core class design is better than it's been in years. Mythic Plus is at an all-time peak. I've got a report coming out on that next week. By the raw numbers, it is literally the best it has been through all of this current WoW expansion. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to some numbers. So we're taking a look...
I wish I enjoyed Mythic Plus because I just don't. Like, I'm sorry, I don't find it to be fun. Like... it's just, yeah.
at the launch
Warrant,
of
yeah.
Dragonflight, and that must have been a terrifying thing for them. Its launch did not bring them back to their earlier Shadowlands numbers. That is dire, and it reflects an abnormally weak marketing campaign, one of their worst expansion cinematics, and an expansion that felt almost unexciting by design. Which
Whoa, wait a second. So none of this is even about the release. None of this is post-release of Dragonflight at all. So we don't even know how well Dragonflight is doing in terms of actual numbers. Because this graph ends whenever Dragonflight, like, not yet? Okay, maybe there's another one. All right, cool. They show it? Great.
That is dire, and it reflects an abnormally weak marketing campaign, one of their worst expansion cinematics, and an expansion that felt almost unexciting by design, which I kind of understand. How can you have a massive villain arc right after you've tried to pull the jailer? Right after you've wheeled out developers to claim in marketing materials that the jailer's demise is in fact the closing of a book that began in Warcraft 3. That was completely insane. About that. And feature-wise, it didn't have any insane hyper-marketing feature like artifact weapons. And there was even mismatch with audience expectations with the new race. This was really stupid.
I thought these were so stupid. I still do.
Take and playable Dragon King.
I never even played one.
Nothing like what Warcraft as a franchise had led people to desire or expect. But for all of that, and indeed because of some of that, it did focus on the essentials: class design, talents, public events, basic traversal, content cadence. Let's see then what investing in those core foundational things actually gets you in your game. Looking at the Dragonflight sub numbers, we see that initially pretty mid, actually. The initial content seemed to do okay. Not amazing. It clearly did have a lower churn rate than what we would have expected.
So now we have Dragonflight Season of Discovery. Holy shit. Oh my god. Wow.
Things get wild is mid-2023 and beyond. So what happened? Well, Classic Hardcore, both unofficial and official, kicked off. There was a revamp of gearing in Modern WoW, and that I cannot overstate the importance of, because for so many people, gear literally makes them go and play the game. So yeah, fix up gearing, people start playing more.
Imagine that.
BlizzCon then was huge. It got the vibes right, and instead of a woohoo, happy trailer, we got something with meat, with emotional depth, with compelling vocal performances, and
I will say that, in my opinion, I actually like the Dragonflight cinematic more than this one. This is my opinion. I thought this cinematic sucked. I didn't like it.
Amazing animation, industry leading, and of course, Season of Discovery, which was launched quite shortly after. You would be forgiven for assuming that this spike is all Season of Discovery, but some numbers suggest that's not all the case. As an example, we've just published our report of Mythic Plus activity to our members and our analysis of Night Stalker's numbers. That'll be up on the channel next week. The core thing, though, is that Season 3 of Dragonflight, in terms of the number of runs done, is demolishing Season 1 and demolishing Season 2.
Wow.
When we looked into raid statistics, we've been seeing retention numbers that are essentially unparalleled in recent history. Pretty interesting. This slide then draws us a few points of comparison. Right now,
I haven't seen that video.
has as many subs as it did partway through the classic spike back in the days of BFA. It's just shy of Shadowlands' flash in the pan, and it actually looks as strong as Legion. Does it feel like that, though? Does the community feel like that? The answer is no. And there are many reasons, but a big one.
I think the big reason, well, I mean,
fragmentation.
Exactly. Yeah, he's right. There it is. That's the reason. He's right. 100%. It's because retail WoW has a big audience of people. It does. A lot of people play retail WoW. Absolutely. However, there's a lot of people that play Classic, people that play Season of Discovery, people that play Wrath of the Lich King. And so, like, all of these different versions of the game are all aggregated into the same subscription. So whenever you see that it's like, oh, there's this many subscriptions, how many people are subscribing for each different type of content, you can't really know that. Like, you're guessing. That's really the best way you can do it, is you're just guessing. And so, and that's the same with me, right? Even I'm guessing. But what I do think is happening is that the retail WoW community, it's not the entire WoW community anymore. There's like Classic WoW and Season of Discovery and Wrath. Well, I guess like Wrath is Classic WoW. But the point is that that's why it doesn't feel as big, is because the entire audience isn't consolidated in the same way that it was in like 2018. Or
Season
Legion.
of Discovery and Modern have all got different player bases. We literally don't see each other. We don't watch the same YouTubers and watch the same Twitch people, right?
Yeah.
So together, we're producing Legion-like subscription numbers, but it doesn't feel like that because we're actually logging into different versions of World of Warcraft.
Exactly.
And that, I think, is an important factor.
And that's
Modern
why, like, Legion felt a lot bigger, in my opinion, because everybody that was subbed for Legion. Everybody was playing Legion, whereas, like, now it's spread out between 3 or 4 different versions.
World of Warcraft is, I think, very much on an upswing.
And by the way, like, it's a good thing. This is overall a good thing, because that means that you're going to have way more people collectively playing the game.
Modern WoW is still short of
You're serving
Legion,
more customers.
because Legion produced these numbers by itself, without a Season of Discovery, without a Classic. But still, I truly believe it is on an upswing. Basically, what they need to do is the hard work and just making stuff.
I think that retail WoW is in a position where it will just, like, slowly probably go down in numbers, but they're making retail WoW for the people that like playing retail WoW. Personally, I feel like the game has diverged so much from what I want out of an MMO that it's very hard for me to think about playing retail WoW seriously anymore, because I've just done it so many times. It's literally going up. Well, we don't know if it's going up or not. Mythic Plus numbers are going up, but is that indicative of the entire population of the game? I don't know about that. I don't really think so, but it's a point on the graph.
Dragonflight was a great version of World of Warcraft. The game mechanics, brilliant. The types of play, the reward schema, massive improvements. But it was not a great representation of what Warcraft, the franchise, Warcraft, the emotions, Warcraft, the world, the setting. It's no wonder that they are leaning into more core Warcraft things with the War Within.
It's interesting to me to see that so many people are, like, very adamant about that I'm wrong about this, and that Mythic Plus is retail WoW. I would assume that less than half of the people that play retail WoW do Mythic Plus. Absolutely. Like, yeah, I don't think so. I think it's probably like 20% of people, if I had to guess. Because you have to assume that, like, retail WoW, like, there's, like, a large, like, unwashed masses of people that just play the game really casually. 25% maybe. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'm not really going to go and look at retail WoW, like, Mythic Plus numbers and then say to myself, oh, yeah, this means that WoW is doing well. Now, for all intents and purposes, it looks like Mythic Plus is doing well. It does, which is, like, to me, and this is what I said before, is like, I don't like Mythic Plus. I don't find it fun. There are a lot of people that do. So it's like, at a certain point, maybe the game's just not for me. Delves will be for you. Maybe that's it. Yeah, I mean, I haven't liked Mythic Plus ever since Legion. I liked Legion Mythic Plus. I didn't like a BFA Mythic Plus or Shadowlands Mythic Plus. I really feel like keys are the best thing added to the game for myself personally. I would like Mythic Plus if it was capped. I don't like the fact that it's infinitely scaling. It might sound stupid, but I don't like content that you can't beat. I wish that the, what do you call it? Like the meta of the game was like speedrunning plus 20s rather than trying to push 28s or 30s. I find that more interesting and cooler. It's my opinion.
And why they are setting both Midnight and The Last Titan
It's
in
reworked for Season 4?
So clearly,
Yeah, I remember looking at that.
Modern WoW, as a subset of World of Warcraft, has a long way to go, but I think is absolutely on the upswing.
See the numbers.
And now it's time to talk about some numbers. Okay, we cannot do exact ones here, but we can try. Our last official number is 5.5 million. That was a few quarters after they plummeted from the Warlords of Draenor launch spike of 10 million. And guess what? Based on what they did say in prior earnings calls, we can get a workable subscriber number estimate for now that is basically as accurate as you can do.
Okay.
So, Warlords of Draenor's low was 5.5 million. When Legion launched, a misunderstanding with a journalist led to a number of 10.1 million subs being reported.
Yeah, I remember
Blizzard
seeing
said
this.
that was false. They didn't provide a number, though. But enter this, the Q1 2017 earnings report. So that's Q1 17. Legion released in Q3 the prior year, and this is what it says. Legion's overall performance is slightly ahead of the prior expansion. Now, this is obviously not perfect data, but, you know, 2 to 3 quarters post-launch, WoD was about 5.5 million, so what is their definition of slightly? If it's only 5%, then that would put Legion at a similar point in its cycle at 5.8 million subscribers. If we take this as a starting point, we can have a lot of fun. Okay, if we're at 5...
So he's saying that this is 5.8 million because the frame of reference is referring to the same point in Warlords of Draenor that was also about 5.5 million. Pull me up. This is where Bellior fucked up. He's wrong. Okay. Explain why. No, I think that what I think I know what he's going to say. He's going to say that whenever they're referring to performance, they're talking about the amount of money that the game is making and not the amount of subscribers. Yeah. Yeah. I think he brings up a very good point. If Legion is performing well, that doesn't necessarily mean that the subscriptions are performing well. And he does make up a good point. Because, like, for example, you have, obviously, towards Legion, there were a lot of people coming back. They were adding more microtransactions into the game. The WoW token had been added. The WoW token got added towards the end of, towards the end of WoD. Probably 70% through the expansion, something like that. So you would assume that the performance that would be referred to, do we know that performance is referring to subscriptions, or do we know that it's referring to revenue? It doesn't mean subs. Yeah, the WoW token took off at the Moose. Yeah, you remember the Moose is loose. Everybody started buying Mooses. So I don't know if this is indicative of subscribers or revenue. The fact they added tokens into the Garrison economy, self-lose something? Yeah. Look at the rest of the games on the list. They talk about players. Bringing players back into the game. Time spent. Daily active users is Hearthstone.
Obviously not perfect data, but, 2 to 3 quarters post-launch, WoD was about 5.5 million, so what is their definition of slightly? If it's only 5%, then that would put Legion at a similar point in its cycle at 5.8 million subscribers. If we take this as a starting point, we can have a lot of fun. Okay, if we're at 5.8 million 2 quarters after Legion launched, then you just draw a horizontal line, you see that we hit about 5.8 million with the launch of Guardians of the Dream. But since then, it's hard to say because the y-axis isn't labeled, but
yeah, sure.
If you are to assume that the y-axis starts at 0 and you count 5.8 million in pixels, you work out a subs per pixel value, and then you do the maths, then we get 7.25 million subscribers right now, there and abouts. And yes, this is a rough estimate, but guess what? We'll be able to prove that the y-axis actually does start at 0. So, while this is rough, I think you can see the fairly clear logic here, and at least it's a pretty damn good ballpark. But let's get a bit spicy.
I think that Bellior is right if that earnings call, his argumentation and logic is extremely sound, and I actually think that he creates a very good argument of why this is true if performance and performance and how well the expansion is doing is referring to subscription numbers and not revenue. But I think that if it's referring to revenue, and I think that it is revenue and not subscription numbers because it's an earnings call, not a, basically a health report on World of Warcraft. I think it's revenue. Then I don't think that it's indicative because of how many extra microtransactions were added in Warlords of Draenor. I just don't think so. So 7 million would be crazy. Yeah, exactly. Earnings call equals revenue. Yeah, and it would logically make sense that the earnings call would be referring to revenue and not subscribers. Warlords of Draenor sold 3.3 million copies over the first 24 hours. Over 3.3 million copies of World of Warcraft Legion are sold during the game's worldwide launch. Both of them sold 3.3 million copies during a 24-hour period. I think this is what they're referring to, not subscriptions. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I wish Blizzard would just come out and say, maybe if we argue about it long enough, Blizzard will just be like, no, actually retail is really popular, and here's the numbers, and you're wrong. Okay, all right, well, that settles it. Or, nope, Classic's carrying, and retail sucks, we're doing our best. I really wish they would just come out and say what's going on. But I don't think that they ever will because, I mean, really, why would they?
Here, what were WoW's worst numbers? Well, 4.07 million, there and abouts midway through BFA, and during Shadowlands, even with Classic helping, 4.5 million. One thing that actually does make me feel good about these numbers is the scale, though, because in the earnings call, again, covering Classic's release, Blizzard said it was the sharpest growth in history and that they essentially doubled their subscribers. And if you go back to the annotated chart, you can see from 4.07 million to 8.27 million, which basically is a doubling. So I'm very confident that on that graph, yes, it's 0 on the y-axis. That is its starting point. And that I actually really do respect. A lot of companies will try to fudge with data by not labeling a y-axis or being a bit funny with it. That they really do seem to be just giving out the actual trends. That's honestly quite refreshing. So I suppose...
Well, the reason why they're doing it is because the trends look good. Like, this is a very good trend for them to be having, especially if you contextualize it with everything that's happened in, like, the game. This is a good trend. So, of course, they're showing the numbers. Blizzard stopped talking about subscriber numbers because the number kept going down.
To Holly and John, they evidently felt that actually they're in a strong enough feeling position that they can show this kind of thing. So that's the sub numbers, but there are other vital things, because for Blizzard, it's all about revenue per user. They use the store a lot more now than they used to. They pull...
And that's what I'm curious about, is because whenever I hear this, I'm thinking to myself, they're probably talking about revenue.
Revenue forward using 6 and 12-month sub deals. But the thing is, WoW is probably over twice as expensive to develop. I mean, literally, the headcount is like over, I think it's still over double what it was during Legion in like those earlier days. But our sub fees haven't risen. The expansion box prices went up, but not that much. So I think clearly the microtransactions, like the cosmetics and the token, those are doing quite a bit of work. Because yes,
absolutely,
the World of Warcraft team is, I think, just shy of 600 people. It really is quite massive, and that is far larger than it was at the past. And say, you know, the likes of Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King, it had a team that would look tiny compared to the current one. And of course, that's when they had 12.1 million subscribers. So that is basically it. I cannot wait for this talk to properly get out there so we can actually just break it down, go through all the detail. I think Holly and John doing a talk like this is really, really cool. Of course, at GDC, this is a case where they will be doing a presentation to fellow developers. Like, you don't just walk into GDC. Those tickets are pretty damn expensive. I should know because one of us is over there right now doing GDC things.
I think I might go next year.
Project.
I haven't decided.
Now, to be clear, he did not go to this talk. We learned
I had a lot of people told me that I should have gone.
Sources, shall we say. But knowing that this will be going public, not super far in the future, I kind of feel comfortable sharing it, because I think especially right now, the community could probably benefit from just a general check-in on the numbers. And hey, who knows, maybe Holly and John will drop some interesting numbers in this presentation when we actually get our hands on it in the near future. That, though, is that. You now basically know what the subscriber trends, I mean, you know exactly what the sub...
I don't know, man. I really just don't know. Because I hear what he's saying, but I just can't assume that they're referring to subscribers. Like, I think that they were 100% talking about revenue. I mean, it's so hard to say. And then, like, if I look at it, yeah, it's a lot of assumptions. It is. And another thing is that, well, let me let the video finish, and then I'll talk about it more, okay?
Trends have been for WoW since Legion.
But yeah, his reasoning is sound, but it's based off an assumption. And it's not his fault.
Sub, and that is something we have not been able to say in, well, pretty much a decade. It's kind of crazy. That's it for today's video. I hope you found this one interesting. I mean, goddamn, I certainly did.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Of course,
see
you tomorrow for the regularly scheduled Warcraft news.
So there it is. Check his Twitter. Numbers have been soft combined. Increasing greatly reflects what active player shows, but also shows huge decline since February onwards. Well, let's go back and look at it again. So if you look at this number, what happened here? Like, this is what really matters. Yeah, 10.1 hardcore. Yeah, that's really the difference. Hardcore WoW, probably. Oh, BlizzCon. Did they announce Season of Discovery at BlizzCon? Oh, they did. Yes, they did announce it. That's what I remember. Yes, you're right. So maybe that's what happened. It's like they announced Season of Discovery and the War Within, and subscriber numbers went up massively. Holy shit. Yeah, nothing was happening before SOD and then the next patch. They made hardcore official as well. I feel like hardcore was pretty small. Like, I would be surprised if hardcore affected things more than 5%. Like, I really, like, I don't think it was more than 5%. The WoW token value went through the roof then. Also, it shows only active subs rather than active players. A lot of players have 6 to 12 month recurring subs while not playing. A more accurate graph would have been concurrent players. Yeah, who knows? But either way, I do think that a lot of the growth in the game in general, and Just Corden said his estimate was roughly on the money. Yeah, but, like, I don't really trust, like, I don't trust that guy to know what he's talking about. I'm sorry. And it's nothing, I don't have anything negative to say about him, but, like, I'm not going to listen to, like, a random guy on Twitter that has no actual, like, he doesn't work for Blizzard, he doesn't have any inside info. If he did, he wouldn't be sharing it. Like, of course I'm not going to base that off of it. I'm going to try to look at the graph and make the best decision I can off of the graph. Obviously. You shouldn't, it's common sense. Yeah, I mean, come on. While Separated has a chart and the graphs post and pre-WOD look decent. Even if the revenue per subscribers, the numbers have gone way down either way. Just look at what the numbers were back when Blizzard made them public compared to the graph. Well, I think the numbers are about the fucking same. But I feel like one of the big reasons why... It's like, I bet Shadowlands was way lower than this. And I think the only reason why it was this high was just straight up because of Classic WoW. Because I remember Shadowlands, nobody was playing WoW, nobody liked WoW. Like, what the fuck? Like, there's no way that that was what it was if you're only talking about, like, active Shadowlands players. The still crack from hardcore? Yeah, I think it matters. This is all too much like we can safely guess sound accurate. Looks like it could be true for my liking. Interesting, though. When is Kata being released? I don't think Kata is going to have any impact. This is a really good video by Bellier. Make sure to give it a like. Give him a sub if you haven't. This is very, very good. Nax release? Well, Nax came out like 7 days or like 4 days after Shadowlands. It was so stupid. I didn't even think Dragonflight is this bad, but none of my friends play WoW anymore, so it feels bad to play and log in by myself. I genuinely wouldn't have expected that many active subscribers, so 1 million is huge. Hard to say if we know that's true. I loved Legion. They need to repair the lore damage. While they actually acknowledge what they did to the characters in Shadowlands. True. Let's see here. Aspect the Eyebrow presented was the expected drop-off rate of Blizzard 2023. Suspension of operations in China represented. That's also a very good point, is that, yeah, not even showing the drop-off from not having China players is huge, too. Kata's gonna suck dick. I don't really, like, whenever I think of Classic WoW, I don't think of Cataclysm. I'll tell you that. Like, Cataclysm is retail WoW, in my opinion. Like, I'll play Kata, right? I mean, I'll play it. Of course I'll play it. But, like, really, Classic WoW is Vanilla, BC, and Wrath. After that is something else. I think that what they should do is they should just say, guys, canceling Kata. We're going to go straight to Mists of Pandaria. Then after Mists of Pandaria, we're going straight to Legion. That's it. Done. Just fix the timeline. I know a lot of people really wanted me to watch this video and look into it. But yeah, that's kind of what my opinions are. I don't really have a lot of, like, super strong, you know, like, oh yeah, this is what the game is going to be. Like, I think that Belluer creates a very good argument. If this is subscriber numbers based off of his reference, his frame of reference, then he's right. But I don't think it is, because they're talking about it in an earnings call. Is retail WoW dying? I think that retail WoW doesn't have the same popularity as it used to. I don't think it's as popular as it was in Legion. And I would say that Dragonflight is the lowest peak for retail WoW. How could it be revenue? So Classic peaked at 500k subs. It doesn't make sense. Well, the other graph isn't really referring to revenue. This is referring to subscribers. This doesn't have any relation to revenue. All this has a relation to is subscriber numbers. So there are two different graphs with two different numbers. So yeah, this is subscriber numbers. And then if they're talking about deep engagement, and they're looking at this one right here, how could the last peak be so close to Legion if the revenue, if there was that much microtransactions? Well, because this graph is referring to subscriber numbers. So, okay, let me just take a second and think about a way to describe this so it makes sense. because there's a lot of numbers going on. I want to make sure that I fully get it. So basically, the reason why this graph is being used is because it's being cross-referenced from another graph that was used of subscriber numbers before Blizzard stopped reporting them in Warlords of Draenor. And then that graph is being used as a point of reference for a statement that they made in an earnings call that said that the performance of the expansion was similar to the first point on the graph that they actually reported subscriber numbers for. So what you're comparing are subscriber numbers versus potentially revenue, but we don't know. No shit, because they didn't have a shop back then. The revenue they had for WoW was purely sub. How is it hard to understand? Exactly. And so, like, I don't think that the subscriber number graph, I don't think you can overlay the revenue graph for WoW. And it will probably be, like, similar, right? I mean, a lot of these are going to be similar, but it's not going to be one for one. Because an earnings call is about revenue, and subscriber numbers are about community size. So whenever you look at the amount of revenue, and there's a number referring to revenue, that's what I'm going to probably assume it is. Or at least I'm not sure, but I think so. The subs bring in revenue. They do, but I think the subs, like in, I would say like in Wrath, I bet subs were 100% of the revenue. Or like 80% with the storm mounts. I don't see your point. I think that I'm explaining this badly because usually whenever I see something like this, I think it out ahead of time so I can explain it in a way that makes sense because I'm trying to like put everything together because there's like 3 different things that are going on. So the report talks about engagement. No, it doesn't. It talks about Legion's overall performance. So basically this is what the connection is. If you don't have this statement, you can't make a connection. This statement creates the connection. So read what it says. Deep engagement. This is just the title of this slide. It says World of Warcraft time spent grew year over year, and Legion's overall performance is slightly ahead of the prior expansion. Overall performance, in my mind, probably doesn't mean subscriptions. So Legion had less subscribers than WoD. I would assume that Legion probably didn't have as high of a peak as WoD. Now, how did the expansion go afterwards? I don't know. But I think that definitely Legion started at a much lower point than Warlords of Draenor did. Similar subs, but Legion had microtransactions? Maybe. Can you estimate the retail classic numbers by extending the BFA line and waiting for classic hype to go down? It's hard to say because you can't measure hype going down, really. This is the main point, is that not only did they add in a bunch of extra microtransactions in between these 2 time periods of like Legion and like Warlords of Draenor versus like Legion. And the biggest one obviously was the WoW token. Adding in the WoW token was fucking massive. So right here, you can probably look and compare the graph here of this, and there will be some degree of similarity here. Like the peaks here will be kind of the same thing. Now, obviously not the exact same, but you can see, for example, like this is December 2023, and this is pretty much somewhere around December 2023 as well also, right? And then you look at 2023 right here at the very beginning at Dragonflight, and right here you have 2023. So there are going to be some similarities. Is it a one-to-one? No, it's not a one-to-one. But it is something that you can measure it against. So whenever we're talking about this, I don't know if interest in the game, and you compare this to Legion. So this is 2017, right? 2017 WoW, also basically about the same. It seems like WoW really lost popularity in like Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria. And once it leveled out after like in probably about like the middle of Warlords of Draenor, it's gone down ever since then, but it's gone down a lot slower. Like this is whenever it was mainstream popular, and this is now. Legion didn't have Classic to carry it. Exactly. And so there's like, this is the problem that I have. I don't know if this number referring to overall performance is referring to subscriptions. I don't think that it is. And on top of that, I think that this graph, you can't necessarily say that retail WoW is doing well or not doing well, because you can't separate the subscriptions for people that are playing retail WoW versus people that are playing classic. And if you want to make it even more complicated, there's probably a lot of people that play retail WoW and play classic. So how do you really determine where the value proposition is? It's hard to do that. Bellior is doing the best job that he can. I think that he's as right as you can be. I don't think that there is any way that I can create better data than he can. I think the only person who can create better data is Blizzard.